Football stadiums sound different this year. Without fans, or with fewer fans due to the coronavirus pandemic, they're quieter, without the big, raucous crowds that typically define game days. There's more to it than that, though. It turns out, taking out crowd noise isn't just an ambiance issue. It's a strategic one. NFL teams are used to adjusting how they make calls at the line of scrimmage in noisy environments, but not so much in quiet ones. Take out the fans, and suddenly, there's a new game within the game as teams try to protect their own information. But back up. To get what NFL offenses need to do to protect their plays this season, you need to know a little bit about how sound travels in stadiums. A typical NFL crowd is loud. They'll often put out over 110 decibels of sound during a competitive situation in a game. That's as loud as a rock concert or a 737 when it takes off. The NFL is using artificial crowd noise in stadiums this year, but the loudest it can get is 70 decibels, about as loud as a typical conversation between two people. It's also played at a constant volume. It doesn't rise and fall like a real crowd.
If the visiting team has the ball, you don't hear a lot because the crowd is loud, and our microphones, no matter how directional or sensitive, we can't filter out 70,000 people encouraging the defense. If Tom Brady had the ball in New England, or back in the day, Peyton Manning had the ball in Indy and then Denver, it was like church. Shh, this guy's working, and you could hear everything. And then as soon as the defense got the ball, it was like a whole other world, and we're running around turning things down.
A typical crowd is also made up of people, often wearing jerseys or big puffy coats while sitting in the stands. That's important because soft surfaces, like people or big puffy coats, absorb sound well. Sound bounces off hard surfaces, like stadium seats, which creates an echoey effect. So, when tens of thousands of people make noise in a stadium, while wearing their puffy coats and sitting in their seats, it creates a blanket fuzzy roar that dulls what players can hear and what microphones can pick up. Without those people and without that roar, any sound emitted in a stadium bounces around and is easily overheard. Why are microphones important here? They're important because the NFL's broadcast partners, that's NBC, Fox, ESPN, or CBS, used to capture the sounds of the line of scrimmage by miking up an umpire who'd stand behind the defense before every play. The problem was, the umpire kept getting run over once the play started. So in 2011, the league moved umpires behind the offense. Since they were no longer facing the play, the umpire's microphone couldn't capture the sounds the broadcast networks love to send into people's living rooms, like the quarterback making an audible or calling out who's the mic linebacker.
Elvis! Hey, Tupac! Dusty! Tupac!
Because of this, the league decided to start miking up a guard or a center, which made the calls come through more clearly and TV broadcasts a new source of information for defenses.
Towards the second half of my career, when they started having the microphones on the offensive linemen, you could actually start hearing the communication that was happening on the line of scrimmage. And so defensive players, instead of watching the typical film like the offensive players watch, like they just started watching the game copies to try to pick up on, all right, what are the calls that I can hear that they're making?
When an opponent cracks the code on a play, offenses can switch up their language. Laser can become Larry or Cougar can become Cobra. This only works when it happens a few times a season, though.
You can't change your language. You know what I mean? It's like if we know English, we can't teach them Spanish, before week 1.
It's too hard to change the verbiage every week, so teams may need new strategies so their signs don't get stolen in the first place. Remember those empty stadiums with any sound flying around and bouncing off the seats? That's what can happen to play calls and line adjustments if teams aren't careful. Without precautions, the silence of stadiums this year can be very revealing.